Welcome to the Regen Brands podcast. This is a place for brands, retailers, investors, and other food system stakeholders to learn about the consumer brands supporting regenerative agriculture and how they're changing the world. This is your host, Kyle, joined by my co-host, AC, who's going to take us into the episode.
On this episode, we have Mary Purdy, who is the Managing Director of the Nutrient Density Alliance. The Nutrient Density Alliance's purpose is to ignite awareness and mobilize action around the nutritional benefits and improve food quality of soil-building regenerative agriculture to drive demand for a more sustainable food system and improve human health outcomes. You've heard us talk a lot about how the increased nutrient density of regenerative foods will be a powerful marketing mechanism to increase demand for regenerative products and spur more adoption of regenerative agriculture. Well, Mary and her team at the NDA are at the forefront of those efforts. In this episode, Mary shares powerful insights on the science linking healthier soil to more nutrient-dense food, the urgent need for research and clinical trials, and why dietitians, farmers, and brands must work together. We explore the regulatory landscape, the importance of using clear consumer language, and how the industry can avoid greenwashing while advancing nutrient density claims. We also tackle some big questions like, why aren't dietitians and food service professionals being trained to understand the connection between farming practices and nutrition? What practical steps can brands take to communicate nutrient density without regulatory risk? And how can regenerative brands get healthcare influencers involved to drive more demand? We're talking phytochemicals, phytonutrients, flavonoids, and all the other fun things at the intersection of soil health, human health, and regenerative marketing. Let's dive in. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Regen Brands podcast. Very excited today to have our friend Mary Purdy from the Nutrient Density Alliance joining us. So welcome, Mary.
Thank you so much, AC. Always good to be here.
Appreciate it. Yeah, excited to have you. I'm flying solo today, no Kyle, but Mary and I are still going to have lots of fun.
Yeah.
And this is an interesting episode, right? It's a non-brand episode, but Mary and her team are doing some really important work, and definitely want to make sure that our audience is familiar with what y'all have going on. So, Mary, let's just start really high level overview for people that maybe aren't familiar with the Nutrient Density Alliance. What are y'all? What do y'all do? Fill us in.
Will do. Thank you for asking. So, the Nutrient Density Alliance is essentially a program of the Soil and Climate Alliance and also a sister organization to the Soil and Climate Initiative. Our mission overall is, of course, to restore soil health, to advance regenerative agriculture, and connect food with farming and human well-being. And specifically, the NDA, or the Nutrient Density Alliance, is a collaborative network of stakeholders from the food industry, the agricultural sector, and the nutrition, health, and food is medicine field. And we are building that case for the nutritional advantages of regenerative agriculture.
Yeah, sorely needed.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate y'all's leadership, and we definitely got to give a shout out to Tina Owens and her, being the great catalyst, I think, to this work originally. And Mary, you followed really well in her footsteps, and what y'all have done with the white paper and many other things. I mean, we're members and very proud to be, and have found the membership programming really useful to date. But before we get into all things Nutrient Density Alliance, I think you have a really interesting background, Mary, and we need more people with your type of background, kind of making this connection between soil health and human health. So
Yes.
share with folks just where you come from into this work, why it was important to you, and kind of your journey to get here.
Okay, I'm going to start a little bit further back just because I think it's something notable,
Yeah.
which is that before I became a dietitian nutritionist, I was actually in the theater. So I was somebody who was working, performing, doing stand-up, improv, sketch comedy, musical theater, a little bit of everything. That is a racket of a career, or at least it was for me. um, but I did feel like, gosh, maybe I can save people by helping them improve their diet. So I became a dietitian nutritionist and really worked with what I call like a food is medicine approach, functional nutrition, integrative medicine, and worked with thousands of patients over about 12 or 13 years to help them understand the relationship between nutrition and food to prevent disease, to address disease, and in many cases even reverse disease. So I was doing that for many years, and also teaching classes, again, like, performing nutrition education. Because sometimes nutrition gets dry. You need to infuse like a little bit of like a little humor into the broccoli conversation.
Yeah.
And I started realizing, gosh, I'm tired. It's hard to talk to people one on one, and the world is falling apart. We've got a climate crisis in
Mhm.
addition to a health crisis. And the food system and agricultural system, which is also having an impact on all of the chronic diseases that I'm seeing my patients get into, is also destroying the planet. And wouldn't it be interesting if
Mhm.
we could actually change how we grow and produce food to not only serve the environment, mitigate the climate crisis, but also improve public health? And how do we do that? By talking about the nutritional value of farming and producing food in a way that actually is better for the environment and that serves human health. So I thought, gosh, instead of
Yeah.
talking to one person, let me talk to a whole bunch of people and let me talk to a bunch of people who are in like the nutrition and dietetics and health field so that they can then go out and talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
Can reach so many more people that way. And then, I kept on realizing, AC, that every time I would go to a conference or a summit or be at an event, no one was talking about nutrition. Everyone was talking about,
Mhm.
oh, sustainability, the food system has to change, but no one was talking about the fact that nutrition actually makes a difference in our health and that the way that we grow our food actually makes a difference
Mhm.
in nutrition. So that's how I transitioned to being more of like a nutrition and sustainability advisor for brands and businesses and doing
Mhm.
podcasting and writing and education and teaching about this stuff. And then landing at the Nutrient Density Alliance as the managing director. And side note, I also teach at the Culinary Institute of America. You can say that
Yeah.
I work for the CIA. They have a sustainable food systems program, a master's program, and I teach sustainable diets and public health, and also teach their capstone course. So yeah, I have my fingers dipped in many different areas, but I'm loving it. This is the time to be in this space for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems like you're the perfect person or one of the perfect people to kind of come at this intersection
Oh,
based on that
thanks.
background.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And I'm curious, other than just the theatrical career, maybe not having the viability that you wanted to have or the right lifestyle, was there a personal health concern or familial health concerns, or you just seeing people having health
Yeah.
problems that wanted you to get into dietetics, or what was it?
That's a great question, and yeah, I definitely did. I mean, first of all, I've been really passionate about food and nutrition since I was like 12 years old. I was reading the New York
Mm,
Times wellness section way back when Jane Brody was was one of the OGs talking about that. Um, and I really wanted to live to be 100 at least, and I still do. And so I thought, I think nutrition is actually the
yeah.
way to do that. But then my dad got really sick and actually got a really horrible disease called meningococcemia, which is basically shuts down your organs. And he wound up
Wow.
with sepsis and was in the hospital and lost both of his legs from the knee
Mm,
down. And what was interesting to me was that the program at the hospital where he was stationed, if you want to call it that, I felt like no one was talking about diet, and no one was talking about how when a body has shut down, is it completely inflamed, and the immune system is going nuts. No one was saying, "Hey, you know what? Nutrition might actually be beneficial for this healing process, for speeding it up, or helping ensure like the best outcome for him." And I thought, "Gosh, this seems like a really missed opportunity
yeah.
what would I say if I were in this position and working at a hospital and someone came in and was dealing with this? How could I change that? So that for me was like a real aha and wake up moment. Seeing my
Yeah.
dad sort of slowly disappear, and then later after he got out of the hospital, I was starting to read up on food and nutrition as a mode for healing the body, and got him going hard on quinoa and kale, and he's he's still kicking 25 years ago, 25 years
Wow.
later. He was given like
Wow.
people thought he might not last for another 5 to 10 years, but he's doing great. He's almost
Wow.
90. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's great. Wow. Yeah, hospital food is such a disgrace in this country.
Oh,
I
it's
mean, and there's some outliers. There's some people doing really good work with local, organic, regenerative, healthy food, but the vast, vast majority is still just insane that we think this is going to heal someone or this is what we should be feeding to people that are
yeah.
in poor health.
It makes no
Um,
sense. It's such a
yeah,
huge missed opportunity, and that's one of the things I'm hoping we can talk about today is the opportunity that lives within the healthcare system for regenerative
yeah.
agriculture.
Yeah, I definitely want to make sure we talk about the healthcare dynamic, and I know we will. Just to give people more of a background on what the NDA is working on, and I'll audience, I'll refer to the Nutrient Density Alliance, short as NDA, throughout the episode.
Mhm.
Um, you know, we hear about this term nutrient density, and you mentioned there was this long time where no one was really talking about nutrition. I feel like it's still probably that way, but within the bubble that you and I are both in, there is this proliferation of discussion and attention to nutrient density. And it's kind of like perceived as the silver bullet that might solve all of our problems and make it really easy for food to be differentiated by its nutritional quality and then linked to the agricultural practices.
Mhm.
But maybe let's just start with a basic question. Mary, is like, how does the NDA define nutrient density, or what does that term mean to the NDA, and how does it shape the programming that y'all are working on?
Yeah, and I think it's important to recognize that there isn't necessarily an agreed upon definition by all parties who are talking about nutrient density. And believe me,
Yeah.
there's a lot of people talking about nutrient density. It comes up all the time. And we're
It's
not
just like regen ag, a
right.
lot of people talking about it, no agreed upon definition.
Hmm, interesting. Okay. Um, yeah, and I think it's also been considered this way of this equation of like how many nutrients are in a food compared to the calories that are into that food, and I that's not how we're looking at it from the Nutrient Density Alliance perspective. It's more of a simple framework, which is that nutrient dense foods are foods that are rich in those nutrients like fiber, vitamins, minerals, phytonutrients that we know in the literature and the research support and optimize physiological functions of the body, including the human gut microbiome, which I know we'll talk about, and that are free from or low in those ingredients or compounds that have been demonstrated, again, in the literature and the research, to be less optimal to health, including agrochemicals, as well as those, the NOVA definition of formulations of food derived substances and additives, industrially processed. And the thing that's key about this is that these nutritional qualities are absolutely influenced by how food is grown and the agricultural practices that are being used in its production.
Hmm. Okay, Mary, I got to ask my first dumb guy question of the episode.
Please.
Could you do like a really simple and easy as possible explanation of like what's the difference between a macro, a micro, and a phytonutrient?
Oh, I like that question. All right. So, macronutrients are your carbs, your fats, your proteins.
So
Micro
like the stuff we're used to seeing on packaging,
Yes,
macronutrients. Okay, got it.
macronutrients. And then
Yeah.
micronutrients are the vitamins and your minerals, like your potassium and your calcium and
Mhm.
your folate and your vitamin C, right? Phytonutrients are the nutrients that specifically come from plants, and they're essentially how they synthesize that in response to the agricultural practices that are used or the environment in which they are growing. These are phyto, meaning plant nutrients. Nutrients that are produced by the plant.
But so animal products don't have phytonutrients,
They
or they
actually
do?
do. That's a great
Okay.
point because what do animals eat? Hopefully, they eat plants.
Right.
And actually,
Right.
there's a conversion process in animals that we don't actually have in humans for certain phytonutrients, where animals can convert certain phytonutrients that they're munching on through the forage that they're consuming that get converted to a phytonutrient that can only be found in animal meat.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. All right. That was very helpful. Now I feel like I can go to a dinner party and explain that well enough myself. Um, and not
Hopefully,
feel as dumb in a lot of these conversations that we have in our industry. So
I'm
thank you.
so
I
glad you asked
appreciate
that
that.
question. No, thank you.
So we just talked about kind of different nutrients. We talked about how the NDA thinks about what nutrient density is. Like, when you all as a leadership team and you as the managing director sit there and say the NDA was created to accomplish what? I'm
Mm.
sure it's maybe hard to wrap it up into one or two sentences, but like, what is that? What is that grand goal that the organization was created to go accomplish?
Yeah, I think initially we brought people together, CPG groups specifically because of that potential that they had, especially when they had some kind of regenerative agriculture initiative, to leverage the conversation around the higher nutrient density of foods that are grown using regenerative agriculture. Because that was the data was showing that consumers were interested in that. That has shifted a little bit because we've expanded our membership to include more farmers who can really talk about those practices and who we can actually connect with brands, but also those who are in that nutrition field, the food service industry, the health industry, food is medicine sectors, who can understand and really get that nutrition is so foundational for health. So we want to try to educate people in that sector to make sure that they feel like they're experts on that soil health and nutrient density and human health connection, because they have such a broad reach. They could influence, millions of meals that are served every single day, from procurement practices, what's on the menu, what is being recommended in healthcare settings. So I think it's really moving in that direction to make sure that we're connecting brands and farms with those who are in the nutrition sector who really get it.
Yeah, and you'd be extremely well equipped to help us make that happen, obviously, with your background.
I hope so. I hope so. That's my goal. It's my mission.
Well, it's a good flag too, because as someone that's had and has an autoimmune disease and has had, work
Oh,
with naturopathic doctors and dietitians and things, when I have that conversation as a patient with that healthcare provider, it affects how I buy every brand that I buy.
yeah.
When a brand markets to me about regenerative agriculture or about their products and the linkage to regen ag and making them more nutritious, it only affects maybe how I buy that category or that specific brand.
Yep.
And obviously, we're huge proponents of figuring out that second thing, but also acknowledging like the leverage of doing both those at the same time and using those healthcare professionals as these storytellers or evangelists or whatever word, educators we want to use, like
Yeah.
much more higher
Accomplices.
leverage influence, like you were
Mhm.
saying. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I would ask too, like, go even further than the healthcare profession and somebody talking to somebody one on one, right? You've got a food service director,
Right.
maybe at a hospital, who
Right.
doesn't even have to say, "Hey, you should buy this brand," but who just knows that this brand or this farm is creating a food product that is more nutritious and is ultimately serving the environment, and that's what they're procuring to be served in the cafeteria lineup, whether the consumers know it or not. They know it, they know the value of it, and that may really help to spread the word about these foods and make sure that there's a greater market if they can be bringing in more and more of those food products that are grown regeneratively or produced with regenerative in mind.
Yeah. Why do you think that group is less engaged than we feel like maybe they should be or that they could be in this work? And you know,
Yeah,
single operator, solo naturopathic doctor, and dietitian maybe is different than a food service director at a big hospital chain, right? So we'll acknowledge there's some nuance there, but
definitely.
categorically, what's the issue there? Why is there not more happening?
I can tell you big time, it's lack of education. I mean, I
Yeah.
actually just gave a webinar this morning to a bunch of dietitians, and I said, how is it possible that we are trained about nutrition, and yet we know
Mhm.
nothing about the medium in which food is grown that dictates the nutritional value of that plant and the food. I
Right.
mean, that is
Right.
nuts. That is, again, like
Right.
a huge miss and a huge opportunity. There's just a lack of education about it. So I think people don't get that. But once they understand it, once we can make that connection for them, that when food is grown in soil that is healthier, that it actually has a huge implications for the nutritional quality of that food, specifically those phytonutrients that are so beneficial to human health, um, that is going to dictate and change how those dietitians, whether they are in retail, corporate wellness, SNAP, public health, academia, policy, it's going to dictate and change how those people interact with the food system as a result.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
also think that, like, you know, another piece of this is food access, right? Very
Yeah. Right.
often, this is the pushback that I get from dietitians who are like, "Listen, Mary, 1 out of 10 Americans gets the recommended fruits and vegetables. I can't be thinking about regenerative. I can't be thinking about saying that." Or,
Yeah.
one of the questions asked today was, "What about the affordability piece?" Right? So there's a big piece around that I think is a point of friction and a barrier, which is why I think if people can be educated on a bigger scale, that someone working in Sodexo or Aramark or a huge facility that is serving millions of meals per day, or an institution or a K through 12, if it's
Yeah.
just what's on the plate, if it's just what's in the cafeteria line, if it's what's on the menu, that is, I think, just a bigger piece than saying, "Hey, you should eat more regeneratively grown vegetables from your farmer's market," which has value as well, but think this just is a different pathway.
Yeah, like, make it the default, make it much more accessible, make it,
Exactly.
affordable,
Mhm.
all the things. Yeah, for sure. Okay, Mary, let's just talk about, like, I'm going to state my general understanding of something, and I would like you as the expert to either edit or add to it or tell me I'm crazy or not, right?
Okay.
So I think what we're here to talk about and why the NDA exists in a lot of ways is we're trying to link these agricultural practices to the nutrition outcomes,
Mm-hmm.
correct?
Mm-hmm.
And my understanding of that as someone that's really focused on CPG marketing of those features and benefits, when a product has regenerative ingredients, is we do have substantial peer-reviewed research and science that says there is that linkage. We don't have specific peer-reviewed research and science for every ingredient, every product, but we have enough to go legally and substantially tell the more macro story, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
on the but we still have more to do there. And on the micro side, there's obviously things that individual brands, supply chains, farmers, people like Audacious, et cetera, can do. But I guess not a great way of teeing up the question, but the question would just be, what is the general state of this whole linkage between the agricultural practices and nutrition outcomes? Like where are we at with that?
I think the theme that is most important to focus on is the health of the soil. There is
Mhm.
absolutely zero doubt that the nutritional quality of food is absolutely dependent on the health of the soil. Like that is just
Right.
fact. And there's no disputing that. Food starts with the soil. The nutritional quality of our food is dependent on the quality of the soil. I mean, that is a soundbite that is indisputable. Now, it might depend on which region, it might depend on which crop, it might depend on environmental factors, but in general, when soil is healthy and nutrient rich, so are the plants that grow in it. So I think we can't just say practices, right? We can't just say
Yeah.
regenerative
Okay.
agriculture leads to higher nutrient density. That is no longer possible to really say because
Yeah.
anyone can say they're doing regenerative agriculture, and we know there's a little bit of greenwashing that happens. But I
Yeah.
think what we can say is the practices that build the health of the soil and have these outcomes, when those outcomes are in play, and that would be increased microbial diversity, for example, larger amounts of soil organic matter, better soil structure, when those are in play, the research strongly indicates that nutrition is higher as a result because of those relationships between the microbes and the plant, because the structure of the soil allows those microbes to work, because the organic matter actually makes the nutrition or the nutrients in the soil more available to the plant. That is science. That is just fundamental and foundational to this
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah.
Does that help in terms
Yeah,
of
it helps. And I'm hearing Tina in my head in many conversations or interviews or presentations where she would very demonstrably say, we are past that point. We actually don't need any more science to
right,
make that fundamental kind of assertion. Um, on the micro side, which I alluded to earlier, it sounds like we need some more there. But the macro, like healthy soil equals healthy food, like we're there,
right?
which is great.
Yeah, I think for sure, and I think that the issue for many brands and businesses and practitioners is how do we explain that in a soundbite where people don't start falling asleep?
Yeah.
How do we help people to understand what the word soil even means? I mean, 10 years ago, I'm working in nutrition. I'm not thinking about soil. Um,
Right.
so how do we make that interesting? And then how do we actually talk to people about it in a way that helps them to understand the health impact? Right? I mean, back when I was working with patients, one of the things that I asked them was, "Why are you here? Right? How can I help
Yeah.
you? Right? What's your pain point?"
Mhm.
So not necessarily saying, "Oh, you're eating too much of this. You're not eating enough of that. Let me tell you what to do." But more like, "How
Mhm.
can I help you? What's the most difficult thing about your life? Are you tired? Are you struggling with digestive issues? Are you dealing with inflammation?" If we can help to speak to consumers, and again, this the healthcare sector and the food service industry, if we can help them identify what the biggest pain points are, then transitioning to getting more of these nutrient dense and nutrient rich, phytochemical rich foods, I think is going to be much more of a feasible option.
So I'm hearing, and obviously I have a little bit of a cheating into this because I'm a member, right? So I know a little bit more than basically the regular person who's listening to this that might not be. I'm hearing communications like training and research kind of relaying. I'm hearing like stakeholder technical assistance to help with applying, getting this message out, whether I am a food service operator or a brand or a dietitian. Um, give me just like what is the NDA working on? Like what is it,
Yeah.
and how would you just list that off and break that down?
Awesome. Yeah, we have about 4 priorities right now. So number
Okay.
1 is the research. We have an incredible research repository, which is always building because brands, businesses, farms, people in general want to know what the science is.
Yeah.
From that research repository, we're working on communication tools and talking points so that you can take talking points, simple things like food grown in healthier soil tends to have higher levels of nutrients, right? And then what's the research? What's the reference that you can point to if you're giving a
Yeah.
presentation or putting it on your blog? So that's number 1 is there are research repository. Number 2 is this Roots to Wellness initiative, which is again bringing in people who are in the health, wellness, food as medicine industry, because food as medicine is absolutely exploding. So, how do we get
Mhm.
those people connected with brands? How do we get those people connected with farms so that they can say, hey, food is only medicine when it's grown in this way that actually has benefits to the nutritional value of that food? Let's make sure that any food is medicine initiatives or folks in the retail dietetic sector are connecting with brands who are creating foods and food products that are actually nutritious and can be medicinal. So that's our
Yeah.
Roots to Wellness initiative. Um, Number 3 is this communications piece, right? Brands want to know they get it, they understand that soil helps with nutrition, but how do they talk about that? And how
Yeah.
have they been talking about it? And how can they learn from one another, right? A lot of brands are doing a great job on this. A lot of farms are doing a great job. A lot of food as medicine programs are doing a great job talking about this. It's amazing. And so, what we're doing is we're creating what we're calling our learning labs. And these
Mhm.
are going to be these collaborative workspaces where a brand and a farm and a food as medicine program are coming together in a space and presenting, hey, here's what we're doing. Here's how we define regenerative agriculture. Here's how we make sure that we're accountable to what regenerative agriculture actually is. Here's our product. Here's how we market it. Maybe here's some nutrient density testing that we've done. Here are the results. Here's how it might relate to human health. Here's where we've had some successes. And here's where we're challenged. Here are our barriers. Then the people who are in that audience are learning from that brand, that farm, that food as medicine program, and then we workshop it. Oh, this is great! Like this is really working, but this piece that you're having problems with, let's workshop and figure out how we can make that better. How we can bring this person's brain power from this sector to this brand's issue and friction point, and learn together and co-create this. So that's
Mhm.
another piece that we're doing. And then, lastly, what are our other give me 1 second to make sure that I've got all of our, pieces here.
I got you down for a big 3 right now. The research repository, Roots to Wellness, the communications work, which you talked about, the learning labs kind of underneath that.
I got the last
Um,
one. And
yeah.
our last, project is working with the fabulous and wonderful Audacious, the nutrient
Yes.
analysis lab. We actually have had a regen what we're calling our regen protein project, where we had members who had, regeneratively raised animal protein products, look at the nutrient density of those products compared to the conventional version of that product. And our pilot, which just looked at, a bunch of brands to begin with, but that we're going to be broadening, all of the data came back saying when animal protein is raised regeneratively, we see a lower overall fat profile, more omega 3 fatty acids. We see a better omega 6 to 3 fatty acid profile. And all of these have human health benefits. So that is data that is in the making, and we're going to be expanding that partnership with Audacious to include not just animal protein and animal protein products, but all different kinds of crops. And we're really excited about that.
Mary, is that the same thing as the beef study that they just like did the big press release about, or is that something different, or is it something like adjacent but it's not exactly the same thing as.
It's totally different, but I would say it's adjacent
Okay.
in that we're looking at similar nutrient profiles. And that was done with Stefan von Vliet of Utah State
Okay.
University. He looked at a few more of the phytonutrients in that beef study. So looking at those phytochemicals that are in the meats of regeneratively raised cattle.
Really?
But we're going to be expanding into some more phytonutrients, looking at that as well, because that's a big piece that I think is often missing in the conversation around nutrient density are these
Yeah.
phytochemicals.
Yeah. Okay, I have follow-up questions for all the things you just listed off, and I'm
Okay,
excited
I'm
to
here.
learn more about each one myself and also share more with our audience. Um, the research repository seems pretty straightforward to me. It's like we need continual benchmarking and backing up of the general claim, healthy soil equals healthy food, more nutritious food. And then also whatever we can glean from more specific instances where there could be claims made or things that could just make up the overall repository. Is there is there any need or is there any effort by y'all, Mary, to like create like an overall roadmap and say like, okay, this is all the research that currently exists. These are the gaps or things that are needed, or to almost like shape future research? Are you going to do some research yourselves, or is it really just, hey, we're doing a great service to the community by just aggregating the existing research and making sure people are most in the know and have substantiation for whatever they want to kind of take into the marketplace? Am I overthinking that one or no?
No, I'd say that's a big both and. I would say we
Yeah.
are aggregating the data, and believe me, there's no way we can even put all the papers that are out there on our site. It
Yeah.
would be overwhelming. So I've chosen 10 reports, seminal reports here, but we remain humble. Like we are always looking for ways to expand on the
Yeah.
data. We're always asking if you have data, if you've done nutrient density testing, please reach out to us. We want to put that on our site. We will be aggregating data from brands, from farms who are looking at the nutrient density testing of their product or their food, and we want to get that up there. So we are always in learning mode, because the way that nutrition may change in an animal may be very different from the way that it may change in rice, the way that it may change in a crop of grapes or something like that. So it's a yes and on both of those. And I'll say one more quick thing, AC, is that in our research repository, we've got hardcore data, case studies, and reports, and all that. But we also have some consumer-facing articles, which I think are a little bit more user friendly for a person who doesn't want to dive too deep into the weeds but wants some talking
Yeah.
points. So that's there too.
Yeah. I've certainly used those, and I go to the research repository a lot myself.
Oh, excellent.
It's not like we're doing that much content where I need to cite specific science or anything, but I'm happy that when we do, I don't have to do that work, and you can do that for me. So thank you. Um,
Always reach
okay.
out, AC, too, if you're like, do you know anything about a
Yeah.
study that's done on this? And I got to tell you, there's a seminal paper that came out recently
Yeah. I
called
saw
the.
your post.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
this is the paper I have been waiting for. It's called Regenerative
Yeah.
Organic Agriculture and Human Health: The Interconnection Between Soil, Food Quality, and Nutrition. Highly recommend it. So
Yeah. Hell yeah. I love it. We'll link to it in the show notes as well.
great.
Um, okay, number 2, roots to wellness. Got the general gist of that one, right? It's kind of mobilizing and educating these healthcare professionals, for lack of a better term, to kind of talk about them in aggregate. What does that look like to start, Mary? Is it just y'all doing webinars like you do and speaking engagements? Is it the NDA starting an influencer program where you match make dietitians and brands? Like, I'm thinking more of like the most commercial outcomes or tactics there, but like, where are you at with that, and where do you see that program like in the future, just tactically? What is it?
Yeah, and I think it is evolving as we speak.
Yeah.
So we have a bunch of people who are in that nutrition field right now who are members as individuals. And yes,
Mhm.
that's exactly what we hope to make happen, is to pair a dietitian or a nutrition professional or somebody who's in communications who has nutrition expertise with one of the brands that we work with. We're hoping to pair, we work with the Western Sustainability Exchange, which is a bunch of ranchers in Montana. They want to understand how they can convince farmers to transition to regenerative agriculture, but they need to know that there is a market for it. So I'm trying to
Yeah.
connect them with dietitians who are in Montana, specifically working in food school
Mhm.
systems, working in the hospitals there, to make sure that those people are connected. Um, And then we are bringing in and talking to a lot of food as medicine programs. So there are food as medicine programs who are already out there. Recipe for Health in California, Four Roots Farm in Florida, Fresh RX Oklahoma in
Yeah.
Oklahoma, right? They are already aware of the fact that regenerative agriculture can make for more nutritious food. So how do we bring them into the mix so that they are again working with brands and bringing in brands that are healthier because of the regenerative practices to serve the folks who are in their food as medicine programs. And that I think is a really important piece of making regeneratively grown foods more accessible to people who are in these
Yeah.
food as medicine programs. Not everyone can afford a $12 box of crackers, right? But
Yeah.
if those crackers are part of a food as medicine program, which is funded by whomever, then those crackers are made more available to the folks who are being served by that initiative. So, those are some of the ways I think that we can begin to engage, but they need to be educated, right? And we're actually seeking funding to help make sure that we are helping people in that sector who have tremendous
Mm,
potential for influence learn
mhm.
more about this soil health nutrient density connection so that they can be brand champions, so that they can help brands, they can work with farms, they can connect the dots between their hospital and a local farm or a regenerative brand that's doing great work.
Mhm. This is gonna be a tough question, Mary, because I don't know
Okay.
the answer to it.
All
I'm
right.
maybe you've thought about it. I'm sure you probably have actually. Like, how do you prevent that from being just a pay to play conflict of interest thing, right? Where it's like, hey, we're gonna talk about this beef brand because they're one of the 20 that have good metrics that we know are legit here, but they're the one giving us the $2,000 or the $20,000. Like, how do you see like figuring out the commercial pieces of that? Like who gets endorsed, who gets flagged, who gets, you know, influenced?
Oh, that's such a good question. And you know what? It makes me sad that we have to think about that so
Yeah.
much. Like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
people are corrupted. There's a conflict of interest. So it is a great question, but perhaps I'm not explaining it in a way because I'm not thinking of it in that way. When I think
Yeah.
of a hospital, for instance, let's say there's actually UC Davis Medical Center has a great chef whose name is Chef Santana.
Mhm.
He specifically sources regeneratively raised beef, for instance.
Oh
It's not
yeah.
that he's getting paid to do that. He's doing it because he's created relationships with a local farm there and is bringing in that because he knows it to be beneficial for the environment and
Right.
knows it has more nutritional quality. So I think
Yeah.
it's things like that, right? Of not necessarily endorsing a brand like because I'm getting paid by the brand,
Yeah.
but making a decision to serve this food or food from this brand because of their initiatives and the benefits that they have to both the environment and to human health, hopefully.
That framing is super helpful. It's like, how do we get Chef Santana to just understand that that is good, viable, and best process, not
Mhm.
how do we get Chef Santana to specifically buy from Temple Creek Ranch, you know,
Right.
like
Yeah.
different thing we're talking about.
But I think you ask a great question because I think this is the pushback that we get in this field, right? That there's a lot
Mm,
of greenwashing. There's a sense that people can say things and not be kept accountable, that they might be doing it for mercenary reasons, for financial gain or, influential power, who knows, as opposed to doing it because it's the right thing for people and planet. And I think, the more we talk about this, the more we educate people and the more people can actually ask the right questions to determine whether the processes that we're going through are in fact
yeah,
full of integrity. I think the less we'll have to consider these questions.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. My questions and curiosities around the communications work and the learning labs is probably the biggest list, and it's I think
Mm,
where I see the greatest overlap in our work and our greatest reason for being members. Right?
mhm.
It's like, how can I help as many brands as possible
Yeah.
make either the macro claim or a micro claim on a specific product?
Mhm.
And I think the white paper was groundbreaking in the sense that it kind of explored and laid that out broadly. And now to me, the challenge for all of us working in the space is like figuring out how to get brands over the hump specifically in their own context as many as we can, right?
Right.
So that they can make a claim on their milk, their beef, their bread, their chocolate, their whatever.
Mhm.
Um, so in the communications working in the learning labs, is it really focused on like specific brands and product claims? Is it really focused on more so, hey, let's just go proliferate this soil health equals human health connection? Like, talk to me about more specific focus there and what people should be looking out for specifically, especially on the CPG side.
Yes, and what I wanna do is I want to move away from the word claim, right? Because
Okay.
that gets us into territory where people get nervous. But I
Yeah.
wanna take us
We
through.
have to call the lawyers when we use that term, Mary,
Right.
as you know. All the
Exactly.
regulatory people get involved, you know?
It's so I wanna move away from that
I
word
like
because
that.
it's scary, right? It's scary, like claims, like,
Yeah.
"I'm making this claim," like, oh. Um, but if we talk about it from the perspective of and join me on a journey here, which is
Yeah.
the journey is we know consumers are interested in having more nutritious food, right?
Mhm.
There's a demand for food that is grown more sustainably and is more nutrient dense. We know that from a lot of consumer research that's been done out there. Doesn't always bear out, we know that, but in general, that's what we're hearing. Number two, the next phase of this journey is that our food right now is is much less nutritious than it was.
Yeah.
That is data that is out there from the USDA, from big organizations, up to 25 to 50% fewer vitamins, minerals, and phytochemicals than there were 50 years ago, right? So that is problematic, and that is a direct result of eroded soil, of depleted soil.
Mhm.
It's also because of climate change, yes, but it's definitely because of environmental factors that have eroded the soil. Then we keep on going on this journey, and we know, well, hey, if soil is eroded, we know that plants get their nutrients from soil. So soil health is absolutely key for making food more nutritious, right? And then
Mhm.
we know that regenerative practice, Jennifer, that we're going down this roadmap still. We're still, walking
Yeah.
together. We know that.
I'm with you.
Okay, good. Are we holding hands? Are we holding hands down
Yeah.
this road?
Yeah.
On this path, this garden? Um, so regenerative practices such as, cover cropping, composting, integrating livestock, not just doing one of those things, but and obviously there's a continuum of regenerative agriculture practice of what that means. But we know that these kinds of practices make the soil healthier. So
Mhm.
then we're there. So I mean, it's a little bit of a long journey, but I feel like if we can help people through that journey and give them those talking points, which if we just made it simple, consumers want more nutrient dense foods that are sustainably produced. And I'm making this up as I'm speaking.
Yeah.
Um, soil healthier soil produces more nutrient dense foods. Regenerative practices like blank 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 make healthier soil. Therefore, our regenerative practices, whether it's a farm or a brand, help to build the health of the soil, which improves the quality of food, and that can benefit your health. So I think it's not about making a claim, but about taking through people through a road or a path or a garden, if you will, if you want, or a farm, where they start to understand a little bit more about what it means when we say that our product is richer in nutrients than the typical product. It's not a claim as much as it is like a point of education and discovery and exploration.
Mhm. Yeah, and in our world, we would say like marketing tactics, it's narrative, it's story, it's longer form storytelling and marketing. It's not product specific purchase driving claims,
Mhm.
which it's good that we're probably having Eric from Audacious on next because that's really probably his world, right? It's like, hey, you're a brand, work with me. We're going to do specific testing for your brand or product so that you could eventually make a very specific science backed claim.
And I
Is
think
that a
that's
fair
absolutely.
explanation
I mean,
breakdown?
AC,
Okay.
that is the key piece here. If a brand or a farm, and we're doing this now with Audacious, it gets their product tested. And I know it's prohibitively expensive for certain smaller
Yeah.
organizations, but if we're able to get more and more brands to do nutrient density testing and compare that against a conventional version of that food, I mean, it keeps on happening. We keep on seeing, look at Squeeze Citrus, right? They are seeing their oranges being much, much higher in those phytonutrients that are so key for human health. Look at distal turkey, right? Or distal turkey. They're seeing higher levels of nutrients in their turkey. So we keep on seeing it across the board. It's consistently showing that data. So if we can, if brands can point to other brands and say, look, they did it, or if they're able to do their own, you can actually say our blank is higher in levels of blank than the typical version of this product. I mean, if you've got the data to back it up, and of course you might have to do it every year, which is the other interesting piece of this conversation. But if you've got the data, man, you can make those statements. And I'm not calling them
Yeah.
claims, I'm calling them statements.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, I need that. I needed that reframe because I'm always calling it claims. So
Mm,
I appreciate that.
mhm,
And I think, like you said, it does soften the fear and the regulatory burden that a lot of brands think about when they think about from a marketing execution perspective.
mhm.
Um, okay, that's a good segue into the last thing, right? Which is the partnership that you mentioned with Audacious on the beef project, the Regen protein project, excuse me.
Yeah.
Um, Mary, the end goal of doing that and more stuff like it is so that you can have case studies for individual or like category stuff with brands and farms. Is it just, to build the research repository? Is it to show the viability of this new nutrition testing? Like the the goal of that type of work and the continuation of it is what for you all?
I would say again, you're so smart. You see, it's everything you're talking about, right? I mean, you said you were dumb earlier, but you're clearly incredibly intuitive and smart. So it is. I mean, it is about continuing to build the research. I mean, I can't tell you how many people that I meet who are saying, "Is it really true? Does it really make a difference with nutrition when people are growing their food regeneratively?" I'm like, "Yes." They're like,
Yeah,
"Where's the research?" I'm like, "Oh my god, there's so much research, but they're all these small case studies. But if we have 100, 150, 1,000 case studies that keep on showing the same
yeah,
data, proving this point, then it's going to make it for a much stronger case, and it helps other brands learn. Okay, what we're doing is
yeah.
actually working, and here's how we start to communicate that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Brands are like farmers in a lot of ways that they don't want to just know that something exists and be told how it's done or how it can be done. They
Sure.
want to see precedent from their peers that other people are doing it, right?
Yeah,
They want those case studies. They want that example, just like the farmer wants the person down the street to actually validate, hey, I'm going to cover crop and it's not going to totally wreck my whole, process over here.
yeah.
So
And it
yeah,
helps them feel
that's interesting.
safe and inspired, right? And I think that the time now is for collaboration. And I know that
Yeah,
you've talked about this before with other guests, but it really is about collaborating with other brands, learning from them, sharing resources, understanding how we can all work together to ultimately like elevate this movement and speed it along because there is not enough time. Like we needed to do this like 10 years ago. So let's move forward and rising tide lifts all boats.
yeah. Well, in that vein, and this is probably not one CTA or ask or, from you, Mary, it's probably multiple and it's different for each stakeholders, but like, is that more people become NDA members? Is it more people send you research? Is it more people, work with Audacious to do testing and then share that research with y'all? Like, give me some specific CTAs for folks that listen to this episode. How can they get more involved? How can they join that collaborative effort?
Yeah, I mean, we would love to have more people in our membership because I think the more we have and the more variety of people from different sectors
Yeah,
and brands and food groups, the more we learn from one another and the stronger we are. So I would say having more members would be great. And we always allow anyone to come to a member meeting to see, hey, who's in the community? What are these guys talking about? What's it like? Number
yeah,
2 is getting involved with our learning labs. Like if you've got a story that you want to tell, come and be a part of our learning lab, or come and learn, or come and share your knowledge and help shape how this movement works. Um, Number 3, I would say, you know, get nutrient density testing done and tell us about it. Share that
yeah,
information. Even if you don't wind up becoming a member, we still want to amplify people who are doing that work. I mean, we have a number of people who are allies or friends. They aren't necessarily members, but you can be darn sure that I am making their information that they have put out into the
yeah.
ether about their nutrient density testing. I'm making sure that's out there. And then I would say too, you know, tell people about it. Tell people about this
Yeah.
movement. And I think brands can be partnering with healthcare facilities. They can be partnering with food as medicine initiatives. People need to be sitting down together at the same place and having these conversations. If at all possible, because I think the more we work together across sectors, bringing in farmers with dietitians, with food as medicine professionals, with healthcare professionals, with food service, with chefs, with people working in public health, and the brands, if I didn't already say them, we will be so much more powerful if we work together. We will get so much further.
Yeah. I love that. And social accountability, for us, I think what we're trying to work on from a Regen Brands perspective with the NDA are those case studies and those examples and those toolkits and resources to help brands make statements. I almost said claims, but I'm going to say statements. That's one.
Love it.
And then two, that overall like education and communications and even influencing type partnerships specifically with what I would call healthcare professionals or healthcare, people, because right now a lot of our brands pay a lot of money to a internet influencer, and you
Mhm.
know if they are directing them to an e-commerce website, they have good idea of ROI and kind of the conversion rate and was it worth it. If
Mhm.
they're trying to just boost a retail effort, there's no real way of knowing that I watched Stacy's Instagram video and then I went to that Whole Foods nearest me and bought that product.
Right.
But um, you know there's something to me that's compelling about the healthcare professional recommendation or sharing of knowledge that I think is more trackable and I think is much higher ROI and has a higher conversion rate. So that's something for you and I to continue to muse on for sure.
Yeah, and let me say something too, because I'm hearkening back to that question you had earlier about how do we know that people have integrity, right? And I feel like that's
Yeah.
almost where the Nutrient Density Alliance comes in as a third party
Yeah.
validator, where it's not just like an influencer who's a dietitian who gets free samples from a brand and then or gets paid by the brand to say good things about the brand. I think that can be a conflict of interest, and maybe not just dietitians, but other
Mhm.
influencers out there. But if we, as the Nutrient Density Alliance, are saying, hey, we know this brand is doing amazing work. We have vetted them, we've talked to them, we know their practices. We want to recommend that you connect with this organization or that you connect with
Yeah.
this food as medicine program. So I think that that's another place where we can act that outside influence that really, for myself, I can tell you 100% that I really believe in being somebody with a great amount of integrity and not
Yeah.
not focusing on the outcome being mercenary or somehow power for my own
Yeah.
making.
No, that's very evident in working with you in multiple capacities, and we're right there with you. This is a critical time also for so many people in this work that are doing it the right way and really maintaining a lot of integrity. That if that group of people doesn't unite with that as a common ethos,
Mhm.
and it doesn't show up in our actions, we risk harming not only ourselves individually but the broader collective, which is very important right now.
Absolutely.
Mary, maybe one interesting thing to get your perspective on is like I don't want to say what are brands not doing right, but maybe what should brands know or what things do you see them just not doing in general trying to make these statements, trying to build this narrative with their consumers around their products, like just specific insight on from your perspective.
Yes. I'm so glad you asked this because I feel like there is an area for great opportunity that is not being tapped into. And
Mm,
that is, we've talked a lot about, micronutrients or just nutrient density. But the thing that we don't often highlight as being so significant to benefiting human health is the presence or lack of presence of phytochemicals. So these phytochemicals, which I mentioned
mm,
earlier, have anti-inflammatory properties, antimicrobial, anti-cancer, anti-diabetic properties that are very, very instrumental to providing all kinds of health benefits. And food currently is very low in phytochemicals because of the industrial processes that have depleted the
yeah.
soil, but also like changed the relationship between the plant and the microbes in the soil. So I think we're missing this opportunity to talk about how foods that are grown using regenerative practices that build a healthy microbial ecosystem in the soil help to determine the phytochemical content of that plant and that food. And I'm not just talking about fruits and vegetables. I mean, beans have phytochemicals in them. Grains, rice has phytochemicals in them, right?
Mhm.
So when the food industry, when CPGs can actually talk a little bit more about the fact that these important, you can call them compounds or antioxidant rich molecules, people know antioxidants, right? That's a simple phrase that a lot of consumers are familiar with. But being able to talk about the benefits of how their growing practices help to inform the antioxidant properties of that plant, which has beneficial health impacts on people. The
Mhm.
other thing that I think is not being mentioned is the impact on the human gut microbiome, right? So
Mhm.
this is all those microorganisms that live in our intestines that have a profound influence on our health, more than just digestion and absorption. They determine how many calories we burn, how much fat we store, how we regulate our blood sugar, how we neutralize carcinogens and toxins. Um, when that gut microbiome is fed and nourished through the presence of nutrient rich foods that
Mhm.
include fiber, higher omega 3 fatty acids, and these phytochemicals, all of which are elevated in plants or animals that have come from a regenerative system. When we have more of those phytochemicals and omega 3s and fiber, that helps to serve our gut microbiome, which ultimately has huge human health implications as well. So, being able to talk more about that I think
Mhm.
is a space that a lot of brands can really begin to include in some of their talking points.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You mentioned also to me, like, brands are not actually talking a lot about taste and flavor, which I
Yeah.
found interesting, and, like, no pun intended, if there's any low-hanging fruit, it would be that. So what do you think's going on with that one? Or
Oh
what else
my
can be done
goodness.
there?
Well, I mean, first of all, taste and flavor are a little subjective, so sometimes it's hard. Some people
Right.
love cilantro like myself. Some people hate it. But we know that what they're called organoleptic qualities, that is the taste, flavor. I know, isn't that a funny word? I love it. I can't believe it exists. It's like that sounds fake, but it's true. The organoleptic properties of food have diminished in the last 50 to 60 years. And that is
Mm.
directly influenced by those phytochemicals. Phytochemicals is the big family, but underneath that are polyphenols, and within the polyphenol family are flavonoids, right? Or flavonols. You probably have heard of some of these types of compounds, things
Yeah.
like quercetin or anthocyanins, resveratrol. Flavonoids are conferring flavor on the plant. With fewer flavonols, that means that the plant tends to be less flavorful. So this is a whole other angle that brands can be using, that farms can be using, that dietitians, practitioners, foodist medicine professionals can be using, is when we have more nutrient-rich foods, you can be darn sure that that food is probably going to taste more flavorful. You know, people have different impressions of what makes things taste good, but bite into a regeneratively grown tomato, that is totally different from a tomato that you get in February that's grown not using those more regenerative techniques. It's a completely different experience, and that is
Yeah.
such a game changer for many people.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like if I had to force myself to summarize that as quickly as possible, it's almost like try to do this marketing in a way that's connected to vocabulary that already exists and is well known by the consumer, right? So instead of
Yes.
nutrient density, it's antioxidants, microbiome, taste, flavor, and using
Mm.
that messaging, those words, and tying things into that instead of trying to not only educate them on the whole process of how nutrient density is created, but like get them to understand the term in general anyway, like to start.
Yeah. And I mean, I think of like a really quick soundbite, which I've been working on just creating sound bites. Healthier
Mhm,
soil produces more nourishing and flavorful food, right? That's not a
mhm.
claim. That is a statement. And you can actually see a very similar statement on the Patagonia Provisions crackers that I'm forgetting Julia Collins, created when she,
Moonshot.
yes, thank you.
Mhm.
Better soil quality enhances both nutrition and taste. Good for you and planet, right? So, I mean, I think things like that, that speaks to people. Enhances, nourishing, taste, flavor. Those are all positive words that people resonate with, especially when they're like in bright red or
Yeah.
like, in fun fonts on the package.
Yeah.
That's meaningful for people.
Mhm. Love that. What else can we do for you, or what else? What other information are you looking for from the brands? Maybe.
Yeah, well, I would ask you, and I would ask the folks in the audience that question. What do you need? I hear oftentimes we want talking points. We want to know how to communicate this, whether we've done nutrient density testing or not. But we
Mhm.
need to understand more what would be most helpful for people. What are the biggest barriers? What are the biggest friction points? Who do you want to be connected with? Right. That's the other thing I love doing. I have this recent story. We have one new member who is a cherry grower in Montana, and we have the
Mhm.
Western Sustainability Exchange, which is a whole bunch of ranches also in Montana. When the cherry grower came into membership, I emailed the folks from the Western Sustainability Exchange and I said, we have a new member who's a cherry grower in Montana near you. Have you guys ever thought about doing dried cherries in a beef jerky or anything like that? And, the woman, my contact there, Holly Fritz, was like, "No, but would you put us in touch with her?" So I put them in
Yeah.
touch, and now they're having this conversation about a
Love
potential
that.
beef jerky with dried cherries, and I'm like, "Okay, that's what I wanna do, right? That's what
That's awesome.
I wanna connect people with folks." So, who do you wanna be connected with? Is there a business, a brand, a person, a type of person, a space, a healthcare facility? Like, I wanna make that happen for you, and I have lots of connections, and if you're within the membership too, we want to understand what would be most beneficial for our members so we can create the coolest, most awesome membership for the folks who decide to join us.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'll give you my current
Great.
answer to that question,
Yeah.
which I think we're always refining as we engage with the brands, but it's probably 2 pieces of, like, technical assistance support, and
Mm,
then 1 piece of what I'd call commercial support. So,
mhm,
on the technical assistance side, it's like, if I have a product that I wanna do testing on, that I want to turn into some sort of marketing something, what do I do? How do I do it? Who can you connect me to? Right? It's just the technical assistance of, if I am going to do nutrient density testing, what does that need to look like? Who should I
yeah,
talk to? What does it cost? Can you help me through it? Can you give me a PDF? Which, hence, I think Eric's going to be one specific example of that when we have him on next.
for
So
sure.
that's one. The other piece is like technical assistance slash communications, which is the overall narrative, right? Which is just that general best practices, the sound bites, the toolkits of, how do we make these more general statements that help with producing marketing content, putting copy on the website, social media ideas, et cetera, to say, you know, healthy soil equals healthy food, and we invest in healthy soil these ways ourselves.
Hmm.
Um, which you and I have already talked about
Right,
working on that one.
right.
Um,
That's
and
great.
then the third one
Go ahead.
is yeah, the third one is like, I would call it helping brands realize the true ROI of the nutrition of their food that they don't get proper credit for most of the time in
Mm,
a highly competitive CPG landscape. Um, so whether that is influencer programs, whether that is partnerships with health and nutrition professionals, it's how can we increase the commercial ROI of the fact that they've done all this work to make the foods nutritious. So it's basically just sales and marketing support to help them realize the value of everything that's gone into their products.
yeah, that's great, and I do feel like, combining people who are in communications, who also have a nutrition background,
Yeah.
and helping them to connect with brands who are looking for exactly what you're talking about is really important. One last thing I will say, because I feel like I've had some very rich conversations recently with folks who are interested in doing human health trials and clinical studies. I know
Mhm.
that Applegate is
Yeah.
doing one, but there are
Yeah.
other organizations out there. Think Regeneration. I know that Recipe for Health is starting to do clinical trials. They're beginning to understand that when they are serving these kinds of foods to people, they are seeing a change in like their blood sugar issues, or they're seeing a change in their inflammatory markers. I feel like that kind of data could be really important too. It's hard because dietary patterns are very nuanced. It's not just like you have one food all day long, every single day.
Mhm.
But in general, if we can begin to show an actual human health outcome that is based in blood markers or improvements in specific kinds of chronic conditions that people have, that could be the real missing link that can help brands also make some more of these really strong statements and understand the value, the nutritional value, as it relates to the human health outcome potential for that.
Yeah, like that's the next frontier, right? It's not just the nutrient density studies and data, it's the human health trials and the actual effect of consuming the food versus whatever else might be another option. So
Yeah,
love that call out.
yeah,
And hopefully we're doing another interview soon where that has proliferated to some degree and we're seeing a ton of momentum
yes.
there. I would love that.
From your mouth to Buddha's ears.
I like it. Well, I'll tee up the last question,
Okay.
which I'm sure will probably be somewhat of a summary of what we've talked about already, Mary. But
Yeah.
we ask everyone this final question: how do we get Regen brands to have 50% market share by 2050? What do you think we need to do?
Okay, I got a few things for you. And
Lay it
again,
on me.
I think there will be some repeats here, but number
Yeah,
one, I would say it's key to mobilize influential gatekeepers. So these are those nutrition professionals, the food service directors who need education, but their adoption of these concepts is going to create immediate scale, right? And
yeah,
getting that taste and flavor to be incorporated. Number two, I would say, is building the evidence, which we're always building, getting nutrient density testing done, and really demonstrating the superiority, if that's the right word, the advantages of nutrition in regenerative foods, and really presenting more case studies. Number three, I would say, is to integrate more with healthcare systems. So really making sure that regenerative foods are being positioned as very beneficial with these food as medicine frameworks and getting institutions to purchase from brands that are doing regenerative initiatives or farms that are doing regenerative agriculture. This can be through health insurance programs, right? Hospital systems. Again, getting that human health data would be really, really great. Number four would be like scaling through strategic partnerships. So I think I love small brands. I really, really honor how many great brands, especially that you guys work with. I mean, I just love so many of them. And I think it is key to convert larger brands as well and retailers who can really shift the
yeah,
conversation and not necessarily bring smaller brands along with them, but just knowing that that bigger brands are going there, I think is going to help shuttle along many others. And
yeah.
lastly, I think, and this isn't always something brands can be involved with, but I do feel like we can all advocate for policy changes, right? For either incentivizing farmers or even brands, maybe that to practice in a way that is more in concert with nature, that builds the health of the soil, and also to reveal those true costs, right? Those hidden costs
Yeah,
of conventionally raised animals, of conventionally grown foods. For every $1 million that is spent on a food being produced is two more $1 million of being spent on healthcare costs and environmental
yeah.
degradation and biodiversity loss. So we got to reveal that, make that more available to folks, so we really have an argument that feels compelling. So those are some ideas.
Yeah. I mean, look, Mary was prepped for this answer, y'all. That was legit. She was prepped for this question, excuse me. So educate/influence the gatekeepers, build the evidence, integrate with healthcare, create win-win partnerships and collaboration, and influence policy, change policy. Those five.
Yes. Yeah,
That's a great answer. Yeah. Love that.
that's
Mary, this
awesome.
has been so fun. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for being here. I really
So great.
appreciate it.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad to have had this platform to chat with you, and so appreciate the work that you do, AC, and Kyle too, of course. I'm sorry he's not here to be chatting, but really such an honor to be here. And bravo to all the brands out there listening and all the people doing great work in the regenerative space. Thank you so much.
Amen. Right back at you. Um, I will put it in the show notes as well. But for those that want to check out the website, it's nutrientdensityalliance.org. Easy. But yeah, thanks, Mary. Really appreciate it. This has been fun.
Thanks.
For transcripts, show notes, and more information on this episode, check out our website, regen-brands.com. That is regen-brands.com. You can also check out our YouTube channel, Regen Brands, for all of our episodes with both video and audio. The best way to support our work is to give us a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast platform and subscribe to future episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. You can also subscribe to our newsletter, the Regen Brands Weekly, and follow our Regen Brands LinkedIn page to stay in the know on all the latest news, insights, and perspectives from the world of regenerative CPG. Thanks so much for tuning into the Regen Brands podcast. We hope you learned something new in this episode, and it empowers you to use your voice, your time, your talent, and your dollars to help us build a better and more regenerative food system. Love you guys.